Hi guys, Brindley Little here from Property Developers Academy and your land partner come to you today for today's instalment of 100 in 100. Number 69 today, continuing within the funding part of the development life cycle. And today is the first of a two-parter entitled Raising Finance. And I want to take you through half of a model that we've created called the Money Magnet. And it's really just to give you some added value in terms of some fundamentals to think about when looking to raise finance for projects, whether that be from investors, private individuals, or whether it be companies, and going down the kind of development finance route as well. We work to a number of fundamentals that we are always trying to stay consistent at. And ultimately, it's an interesting one when it comes to raising finance because a lot of people sort of find themselves in a bit of a quandary when it comes to having sufficient funding lines available, but also having a sufficient pipeline of viable deals as well. So it's kind of like the chicken and egg situation, really. Our advice on that is obviously, it takes a lot of work to get them both to the point of, traction and, getting enough sites, and then ultimately you get to a point where you see a bit of a compounding effect, really, because obviously once the first one's always the hardest in terms of finding the sites, then you've got to raise the finance for it. But then if you successfully exited a deal, for example, then you've got a track record, you prove the concept, if you like, and then each subsequent deal for land and also opportunity to raise funds should become easier, because you're learning each time, you're adding layers to your processes and your systems and your methodology for doing both. But when it comes to raising finance, we want to stick to a few fundamentals. We call it the money magnet. So it's MAGNET. Each letter stands for a specific maxim that I want to talk about. So I'm going to cover off MAG in this one, and NET second half in tomorrow's episode of 100 in 100. So first of all, being mindset. Now, this is a really interesting one, because certainly when you look at other things that you need a lot of when it comes to a development project, new build, for example, could be, well, you're going to need a hell of a lot of bricks to build a house, for example. You're going to need a lot of building materials. You're going to need a lot of services from third-party consultants. And typically, when we're looking at them in our experience, and we see other developers looking at these areas, they're very, very conscious to try and get the best rates, certainly when it comes to materials, for example. So, they're always trying to negotiate, always trying to get the absolute best rates on materials, because obviously if you can get a few pounds off your materials, then ultimately it goes to your bottom line. But when it comes to finance, we tend to see that actually there isn't that same mindset when it comes to money. We need, a lot of bricks, and we also need a lot of money. Effectively, they are no different. They are both commodities, effectively. And once you get your mindset around money being the commodity and a resource that is required to make a development happen, just like bricks are required to make a development happen, then it should point you in a direction and free you up to try and negotiate the best rates as possible when it comes to your finance. It always tends to be that you might get a finance offer from a development company, or you might get an investor approach you that's got £500,000 or something like that, and they want a certain percentage. And on first thought, you feel that it's a bit too high, and you're not going to be able to work with that. But ultimately, because it's money, you think, oh well, I need this above everything else, so I'm going to just accept the terms that are offered to me. My advice really would be to always negotiate on your rates for finance, whether that be through a company, whether that be an investor as well. And it's about proving, certainly from an investor's perspective, it's justifying the kind of rates that you are able to offer, and justifying perhaps the range of rates that you expect to pay from a finance company, for example. Because even if you can get, even if it's 0.25% or something like that, it's not, we're not looking to get something down from 10% to 5%. Ultimately, that would be great, wouldn't it? But if we could get, realistically, if we could get 0.25% off of our finance rates, then that can equate to a hell of a lot of money, and ultimately goes to the bottom line. So mindset around money is just view it as a commodity, view it just the same as any other material or product or service that you require to make the development happen, and negotiate it, and shop around and try and find the kind of best solution for you at whatever stage that you're at. Second in the money magnet is and that's add value. So where we see a lot of developers, investors, a lot of people actually almost approach trying to attract finance wrong, is that they almost sort of to be seen as going cap in hand, whether that be on social media, or whether it be networking events, whether it be direct conversations with people. It's kind of like, here's the project, here's what I need, can I have some money? Whereas, generally speaking, people do business with people that they know, like, and trust. And that know, like, and trust takes time to develop and time to build. And each interaction, each touch point that you're having with somebody, it is vitally important. So if you're just trying to attract investors and trying to hit them cold, if you like, you need to go take them through a process where you're just like you're identifying a piece of land, right? Look at it like this: you identify a piece of land, you might get a response, or you might get their contact details. You don't phone the owner up and go, "I want to buy your land. Here's my offer," and expect that transaction to go well. But we see a lot of that when it comes to raising finance, mainly from investors. They have a certain requirement, they go to an investor, and then they expect fairly rapid kind of results. Really, in our experience, it's about slowly warming your leads, if you want to look at them like that, up, proving that you're credible. And that is by adding value, but adding value consistently. So rather than going out there and constantly saying, "I'm looking for funds, I'm looking for funds, I'm looking for funds," why not start a blog, put blog posts on your website, add value to your potential audience, because you don't know who's got funds and who's watching you on social media and taking notice of what you're putting out there. And how much of an impact you're having, and trying to help others effectively. So my advice would be perhaps to start putting some valuable content out in the world. That might be content on development, to show that you are competent in what you're doing. It might be showcasing some of your projects that you've done previously. It might be talking about investment and the different ways that people can invest their money that will get them different types of returns. It could be other industries, you could be referencing other assets, precious metals, stocks and shares, if you know a bit about that, or you have any information that you can find and research, and maybe make a comparison to some of the development projects that you might be working on. It's just consistently out there adding value to others, and not being sort of afraid that they'll take some of the information and they'll run with it, and they'll do their own developments and things like that. A simple piece of information for a lot of people is how you go about valuing a site. If you can put that information out there, you're showing that you're credible. the processes that you go through. Just because you're revealing some of the things that you do in your business doesn't necessarily mean that somebody's going to take that and then implement it in their own business. Because in my experience, and in Richard's experience as well, and where we've been in the business for a while, is that people, the implementation is where people really let themselves down. There's plenty of good ideas out there. There's plenty of opportunity out there, but it's the implementation that is often the kind of difference between success and failure often. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to put some really good quality content out there consistently. And that in turn will build your profile. It will build people's confidence in you, and ultimately you are getting people to know you because you're out there consistently. If they like you in terms of what you're putting out there, typically if you're putting stuff out there, it's going to attract the people that probably share similar values to you. And ultimately, if you're putting the good stuff out there and consistently, then they're going to trust you ultimately. Certainly, if that then translates into further conversations with them directly, and then you can obviously start talking about more specific details about some of the projects that you may be working on. So even if you're at the stage of your journey now where you don't really have any projects on the desk at the moment, you don't have any leads, you're really just about getting going, don't let that be a reason not to start putting content out there, because as I said, it does take time. So the best time to really start is the here and now, really. So next opportunity you get, spend a few minutes, write some stuff down, write some of the main things that you've learned from this 100 in 100 so far, and start sharing them with other people, because that in turn will go do wonders for you in the long run. After all, development is a slow burn business, so a lot of these things take time. And finally, G for today's session is entitled Green Light. So MAG, so we've got green light. So this is about ensuring that you are in a position to move forward if you're given the green light. So you've got to the stage where you've got a deal, you've maybe signed heads of terms, you may even have even exchanged in terms of contracts or what have you. But even if it's, say, just before you've secured the deal and you're lining up the next piece, you're lining up the funding, because obviously you need funding to purchase the project, then you need to make sure that you are ready to go. You are proceedable. So you've got all the required documentation, ready to send to prospective lenders, ready to send to investors. It might be your deal appraisals, it might be investor packs if you produce things like that. If you've got maybe bios in terms of your team, you've got bits in there about your track record. If you're going out there, you've already secured it, you perhaps bought something with planning and you're looking for funding. It's about sharing things like the site plans and the details. Have you thought about things like the marketing plan? So all these things that you're going to need at some point, it's about making sure that they are there and you're ready to press the button with them should a potential investor come back and say, yes, I'm interested. Could you provide me with X, Y, and Z? You want to make sure that you've got these things to hand, really. But they're the kind of standard sort of things that you'd be asked to provide, really. So a good habit to get into is setting up folders in a cloud storage system or something like that obviously related to that specific deal. And then you might have a folder that's got documentation and it contains all the relevant documents that you need. Might be a funding folder, for example, and then within that you've got documentation to send to prospective investors and funders. And then if you're organized, you're able to then obviously act pretty swiftly, really. What you don't want to do is say, yeah, I'll get those to you, and then come back to them a week later because you don't know where they are, or you've got to pull all these things together, really. So money likes structure. So as much structure as you can provide in your kind of back office systems, if you like, and be ready, then the more chance you have of actually attracting money towards you. So that's the first part of raising finance. Part two tomorrow, we'll be doing NET in the money magnet model. Hopefully you found this session useful. It'd be great to get some of your thoughts, your comments, your maybe even some tips. We talked about adding value to others. What about some tips that you might have in terms of attracting investors and raising finance? So if you're watching this on Facebook, comment on our Facebook group. You're watching on YouTube, by all means comment there. And it'd be great to get a conversation going, and we can share some value from some of the listeners as well. So thanks very much, and I look forward to sharing some more information with you tomorrow in our next session of 100 and 100. Take care.